Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're looking at another accessory, and this time it is the Y-Axis Rotary Chuck from Ortur. We're going to be looking at how this can help you engrave abnormal round objects and items with handles that maybe are tapered. So if this is something that's interesting to you, stay tuned. We're going to jump right into it. All right, so as far as what comes with it, you have your main chuck, rotary, and base plate here. This is all assembled out of the box this way. There's nothing here that I've put together. And then you have this end stop that can slide onto the back. It's just kind of a simple dovetail joint. And then you can bolt this down, and this would push up against the other end. Again, that is optional. You don't need to use that with everything, but it's there to help stabilize certain objects. You then have your connection cable. So this is going to go get plugged into the port on the bottom of the stepper motor here, and then it will jumper into your Y-axis depending on the laser you're using. Of course, then we also have our instruction manual that will help you through the basic setup and then what the various different features do. And then we have this accessory box. So inside the accessory box, we have a few important things to help us connect up. We have the cable that's going to go from the stepper motor on the rotary chuck to the machine. However, depending on what machine you're using, they do provide these A and B adapter cables. And so those are going to help you adapt to most rotary, adapt this rotary to most diode lasers out there. However, if you are going to be using the Ortur LaserMaster 3 like I am, you need to make sure that this cable that came with your laser, it's called the YRR cable, you're going to want to use that. And so that has the end here that will plug in to the cable on this end, and then this will plug into your port on the back. We'll go over that in a little bit when I hook this up. Now in the accessory box, we have a few other things. We have our wing nuts that go onto the sides of the rotary, and you want to make sure that these washers are on there when you install them. Sometimes they're loose, so you're going to want to slide those on first and then attach them. We'll do that in just a minute. And then you have a couple of pins that go into the chuck to help you tighten it down. We'll go over that again in just a little bit. And then you have the various clamping accessories. So we have these jaws, and these are kind of a rubberized plastic. And what they do is you can open this up, so you rotate the outer ring to open and close the jaws. And then if you wanted to add some of these custom jaws, you would pick them out, and then these are reversible, so you can bring them in so that they grab a smaller object with more depth, or you can bring them out in case you were going to try to grab around a larger object or the inside of a cup. And then they also have this stepped version as well. Same thing, you can put them on this way or that way, and then you can slide them in and out just a little bit based on all these screws. So here's maybe a little bit closer look at these two. So you can see you have the stepped version or you have the straight version, and then they have the screw holes that allow various adjustments onto there. So in here as well, you have these posts that have kind of a ball end on them. These help you grab smaller objects and or the inside of a ring. These again will just thread into the chuck as so. So you would put them on all the corresponding holes, and then you could adjust it in or out by using the chuck. Finally, we have the socket head screws and the Allen wrench that allows us to actually install these. So the socket head screws just go down into here, and then would go into the corresponding holes on the chuck. So, all right, so first thing we're going to do is we need to attach these wing nuts into these side pieces. So like I mentioned, you want to make sure you've got this nylon washer on there, and they just simply screw into these sides. So that just keep it loose so you can flip it over and do the other one. Again, make sure you got the nylon washer there. And what that will do will allow this to actually rotate completely up to 180 degrees. So allow you to be able to get a tapered object level. So we'll look at that in a little bit. But as far as assembly, that's it as far as this. Now we need to get our jaw chucks on. So I am going to go with the stepped version first. And we are going to put them outward like so, and that will allow us to either clamp on the inside or on the outside of a cup. And they do include a 4mm angled Allen wrench. Now, if you're like me, I like a nice straight drive, and so we want to go ahead and use this. And so we're going to go ahead and grab a couple of these Allen head screws, and I'm sorry, it's a 3mm head, 4mm screw. So we're going to go ahead and drop this in here, and we'll go ahead and get all 4 of these on and be right back. Okay, now that we have them on, we can just double check that they fit tightly, so they should all meet in the center. And if you're not sure what I'm doing there, what I'm doing is I'm spinning the back, and that's opening and closing this. Now, if you were to really need to clamp down on something, you would take these posts, put them into these holes, and then you can really snug it up. And now it's hard to move, it's not going to slip, but then you can pop them open just by reversing that and get them out. So, for example, if we wanted to grab onto this bottle, we would just simply loosen it up until the clamps fit around it. We would tighten it by hand as best we can, but then to ensure it doesn't move, we just go ahead and tighten them like that, and now that's in there very well. All right, now one thing I should mention is that I'm using the Ortur LaserMaster 3, and this is a fairly low profile laser. So one thing that you're going to need to worry about is how you elevate this up, because it needs to sit above the chuck rotary. So they do sell optional feet that fold down. However, they were not in stock at the time, so I went ahead and made my own replicas. But the idea here is that they fold out and they give you about 5 to 6 inches of lift on here, and then when you don't need them, they fold back in, and then the whole laser sits just about an inch higher than it normally would. So, all right, so we've got the laser up on the bench, and we've got the rotary here down in place. Now, again, we're using the LaserMaster 3, so they have the nice YRR port in the back with the switch that allows you to swap between a normal axis movement and the Y being on the rotary roller, or in this case, the rotary chuck. And so we're going to start by first plugging in our wire to the rotary. And so you want to find the female end and not the male end. The male end will have the pins sticking out. The female end has where the pins are going to go into it. And so we're going to plug that into here. So this is just keyed. You'll see your 2 kind of key parts on this side right here. Those need to go into the open area on that one. So we're going to orient this right. I like to feed this in under here because of the way it's going to end up coming out. And then we just push this in. Always try to push on the white plug itself. Never push or pull on the wires. That'll just strain them. And so that is plugged in. We can actually rotate this back a little ways. And then when you're orienting this to your laser, you're going to want the stepper motor side on the right as to the front of the laser here. So make sure you have that, otherwise it'll kind of mess up your mirroring and your orientation. Now, if this was another laser, we would then just take this and we would swap it out onto the Y-axis motor, but we are going to be using our YRR port. So again, the LaserMaster 3 comes with this adapter. So it's got this smaller plug that goes into the frame, the wider plug that goes into the cabling. So we're going to use the adapter. We're going to plug these together. We'll put that in there. And we'll just run this kind of out of the way to the back here. And we plug this in here. Again, making sure to push on the plug and not the wires as best you can. So that should just clip into place. And now we can fire up the laser and jump into light burn. Okay, so I wanted to point out real quick, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be testing on this straight bottle first, and I've gone ahead and just put some painter's tape on here that will allow us to do some really light marking on here just to kind of get it dialed in and check our settings on here. So something I'd recommend doing, just have, if you've got a scrap one that you don't care about, great. Otherwise, just putting some painter's tape on there will protect the stainless steel of the paint of some object that you've got. And then we'll get this set up in the chuck and then go into light burn next. Okay, so now that we are in light burn here, we need to do a few things to set up the laser for use. So one thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to change from absolute coordinates to current position. And that will allow us to actually position the laser head where we need it and have it work from there, rather than trying to identify where in the board it's at like we would in a normal flat grid. And then we need to do a couple more things where we need to turn off some options. So I'm going to go into the console option here, and we need to make sure that we turn the homing off. So that is going to be a command $22 equals 0. Put that in there, and then that should come up and say OK. And that's just to turn off the homing when you turn on the machine, because the chuck rotary doesn't have a limit switch itself, and since we're using current position, we don't need the other axis to home either while we're doing this. And then since we're using the Ortur LaserMaster 3, we also need to adjust the backlash. So again, in here, we're going to do $141 equals 600, and that's going to adjust the backlash for the y-axis as well. So those two commands, it selects OK, and it's happy with that. We can then move forward to the actual rotary setup. Now there are a couple ways to get into this. You can go up to this button up here, this kind of cylindrical looking thing, or you can come into laser tools and rotary setup, and you'll see the same right there. This should open up this window here, and this will need to set some parameters. So we want to make sure it's on chuck rotary instead of roller. We'd want to enable the rotary. You're going to want to leave it on the y-axis. And now, depending on the machine you're using, you may need to change this. And so for the Ortur LaserMaster 3, we actually need to have this be 96, whereas if it's the LaserMaster 2 or possibly other ones, it might be 120. This is based on what the driver is telling the stepper to do. So we want to change that to 96. And then in here, this is going to be dependent on each item. So you need to know either the object diameter or the circumference. It's going to do the calculation between the two. Now they do include a handy little cloth tape measure. So all you would do is you're going to loop this around your object, and you're going to, well, I kind of did that backwards. Let's do it this way, it'll be easier to read. You're going to loop this around your object, and you want to hold it snug and get your circumference. In this case, it's going to be about 200, and let's get this on the other side so we can read it right. Looks like about 248, 249. I'm going to go with 248 millimeters. So we're going to put that right down here. We'll go 248. And then that should change the parameters. And then one thing we can do is bring our laser head over to our object. Now you might want to make just a quick line, kind of a reference line. I'm putting it right in the middle of this, where this should start. And if you hit test, what it should do is loop around one full revolution and then come back. And assuming it does that, we're pretty close. So let's go ahead and do that. So it's going to rotate around. Looks like it did catch that. I'm going to make this line a little longer because since it moves over, it's a little hard to exactly see. Let's go ahead and test that again. Yeah, that looked like it went back on the same line and parks. So with that set up, now we know that it is turning the right number of steps to do one full rotation on this object. So we can go ahead and hit OK. And now we're ready to set up with one more test. What I like to do is we're going to draw a square. I'm going to hold shift to make it actually square. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to adjust this to something 30 millimeters square. And then we're going to come over to our layers, and we want to make sure our speed and power are low enough just to, we want to leave a light mark on here. And before we do that, of course, we're going to want to focus our laser. So move this up, and we'll actually slide this back to where it's kind of top dead center. Lower this back down, tighten that. So that should be focused on the surface of this. And then we want to put this back in there. Now the other thing you want to do is kind of make sure this is parallel to your gantry. And depending on how you have this set up, you might have a jig set up. You could draw a line with the laser. You can of course eyeball it. But another thing we can do is we can come into our move. We have this set to a really low setting. We're going to turn this on to fire. And we can watch to see that if it does move that line straight across there. The other thing you can try to do is, if you didn't have this object in there, you could try running it along the front edge of that and just make sure it's square to it. It is looking pretty good, so we're going to roll with that. And now the final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place the starting position for this, and you want to set your job origin up logically. So I've got it set here to start in the left middle. I like going with the middle rather than the end because that kind of helps me frame front and back on the round object where I'm going to go. And I'll just move it up over here. And once we're happy with that, we can actually do a quick frame. That should draw a rough object around what we're doing. That looks good, so we'll go ahead and again, we get 6,000 speed, 20 power. We'll see if that leaves a mark. We're just going for a roll and plate mark. There we go. And it's tough to see, but I do see a mark on there. So now what we want to do is we want to measure that. So we've got our tape. And again, we set this up as 30 millimeters. So side to side, that looks good, 30 millimeters. And then top to bottom is maybe just a hair under 30 millimeters. So we could play with our steps per rotation, but it is so close that I'm just going to leave it. Now the next thing you want to double check before you start setting up files is that the orientation is right. Now this is critical that this is to the right. That's going to help you here. So what I like to do here is we're going to come in here and get rid of our square. Let's draw a letter. That can only be done one way. So F is going to be a good one. Now you want to change the orientation of this so that it is laying in the same direction as your bottle. And so it should engrave this way. Here again, we've got it at 6,020. I might actually bump that down just a little bit. Let's take this down to 4,020. And let's put it in, we'll put it down over our pencil line there. And assuming we've got everything set up here, it should come out in the right orientation. Now, if it doesn't, we can always mirror output to rotary. But if this is set up right, we shouldn't have to. So let's go ahead and give that a shot. So we're going to go ahead and frame that. Looks good, but maybe just a touch small. So I'm going to enlarge that a little bit. Let's reframe that. That looks better. Again, still in line, so let's go ahead and send this. All right. Move it out of there. And we do, in fact, have the F going in the right direction. Probably can't see it too well on my screen, but it does look good. So here we know that we've got our orientation right. We can check our scaling as well, but at this point, we know everything's set up. We can actually try a real live test. All right, so as you see, that came out okay. Could probably be a little bit darker, but when working with stainless steel and just plain no coating or whatnot, it does kind of take a little bit of playing with each type of stainless steel and the coating as to what power and speed you'll need to use. So obviously doing a test grid would maybe give me some little bit better results, but we're going to try a couple different things on this next test. So this is just a straight bottle. I could have used just a roller rotary for that. So where the Chuck rotary is going to excel is that when we have tapered objects, you can clamp this, and then this one will allow us to set it at an angle so that it is still level with it. So I'm going to do that on one of these cups, but I'm also going to add some Brilliance marking spray so that should actually interact better and give us a darker image. And so let's get this hooked up on the laser and we'll give that a shot as well. All right, so this time I'm going to reverse this and I'm going to try to clamp around the outside of this. We're going to get that centered in, kind of hold it there. I want to be careful not to wipe off any of our marking spray. We'll grab our bars and snug it up. It's not a bad idea just to rotate it, try to make sure that things look good. Now, what we want to do is make sure this is level, so I'm going to gently move this out of the way. I'm going to rotate it to our clean side, and they do include a little level to help you with this. So you want to kind of center that, and then we're going to loosen these, and we're going to bring this up until that bubble level is right in the middle, and then we'll tighten it down. Now, as this rotates around, that top part should stay level. So, with this, again, I'm going to keep this down here. We're going to bring this back over, and we're going to double check our focus. So I need to raise this up just a little bit. Trying to hit the center, that kickstand, and then there we go. And then we're going to bring this back to the center of our chuck, and then we'll orient this. All right, so there you see we've got it on here pretty dark with the Brilliance spray, and all we got to do is clean this off. The nice thing about this is it comes off super easy. You can rinse it off with water. I'm going to just simply take some Windex and wet a paper towel here. So as you see, and we're really just going to wipe this right off. There we go. And there you can see very dark, very high contrast there. And in comparing that to the blank stainless steel, now granted, I could probably get this a little bit darker with playing with the settings, but this is so much easier. And you know, I know the cans are kind of expensive, but it just takes a little bit, and the can goes a long way. So anyway, tapered cup, stainless steel, Brilliance marking spray, works great. Let's check out what we can do next. So another big benefit to using a chuck style rotary instead of rollers is it doesn't matter if you have a handle on here. When it grabs either the inside of this or the outside of that and can just rotate around, now you can engrave the opposite side of this, and this is just going to rotate under. So we can chuck this up in there and be able to put something on any surface of this other than maybe right where the handle's at. And so let me demonstrate that really quick. All right, so I've put the mug in the chuck. I've just grabbed it on the outside of the top of the cup. So if we wanted to, we'd actually be able to rotate this all the way around. Now this just barely touches there, and so it'd be okay. If this was any bit bigger though, what we could do is we actually loosen these up, and we would rotate this 180 degrees to where it's this way. And then we could elevate this block up on something, and then it's going to be completely clear and able to still engrave on that. So you obviously would need to bring the laser up and bring the laser head up so that you can still focus it. But that is one of the nice features of this, is that you can easily move this around and rotate it without, you know, no tools. Does it in, you know, about 10 seconds there. And then, like I say, with this, as long as it's sitting level, I've got it a little beyond level. There we go. This one will rotate underneath there, and it can put any design on there as long as this isn't going to come up and hit the laser head. So you're going to be able to get a little more than 180 degrees of engraving on this whole thing. But if you want it just on the outside in this area, it's going to work there. Same on the left or the right hand side of it. So just a nice feature of using the chuck rotary over the roller rotary. An additional thing that is really cool with these chuck rotaries is it allows you to grab onto kind of oblong but round objects. So a good example of that would be an egg. Now this is a wooden egg. You can pick these up at various craft stores or on Amazon, and seeing that it is Easter coming up, this might be something you'd be interested in. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set this up with the end stop, and I'm going to use probably different set of jaws, or I might even use kind of the screw and finger joints. And we'll get this set up in the rotary and see what we can engrave on the egg as well. Okay, then I'm going to put these, we'll be able to use them in this second hole. So you shouldn't really need to wrench these down, just to snug them up with your finger. Most of these parts are aluminum, these are steel, so you wouldn't want to strip out the threads. And they're not really going to have a lot of twisting force on them once they're in, so just finger tight should be good. And then we're going to slide this on the end here. So let me back that up a little bit. The idea here is that we're going to see if there's a top or a bottom of this. I'm going to slide this in like so, and then tighten these down so much. I'll move that out a little bit more. I want to have plenty of grabbing room here. So about like that, and then if we push on this with this tailstock, that should be able to grab in. Now we just kind of want to work, visually check it to try to make sure we're round. This is kind of the tricky part on these more round objects, is making sure that it's actually grabbing in center. And that's where the tailstock, if it kind of gets a good hold on it, should be decent. I think we're gonna go with that. All right, so now we should be able to rotate that around and get an engraving on there. So I'm going to make sure everything's kind of locked in. I don't want to tighten this too much more than hand tight, because that's just going to kind of continue to slide these out. So let's get this under the laser, and we'll figure out what to engrave on here. Okay, so we're at the extent of that. So I actually need to boost this up a little bit. So I'm just going to take this piece of plywood, and then kind of try to realign this. I'm going to hang this over each edge, realign this to my grid to give me my right there, and then we can raise this back up, bring this down, and there we go. We've played around with some of the typical and maybe less typical items, such as the Easter egg, but one other cool thing we want to play with is actually rings. Now this rotary can grab onto both the inside and the outside, and due to the fact that we can angle it, we should be able to engrave both on the outside but also on the inside. So let's give it a shot and see how that works out. Now these, I have a couple of these. This one's gold, I've got a silver. These are stainless steel, so we shouldn't have to actually coat them with anything. But if you have other types of metal, you're going to need to look into whether they need a coating, or if there's an anodization on it that you can etch off. But these are stainless steel, so they should work without anything. So let's get it set up and test it out. All right, so I've gone ahead and mounted this to the inside here, and so we're just kind of grabbing it around the outside. And the other thing that you're going to need to do is we need to make sure we get the diameter of this. And so it's going to be easier to use our digital calipers here. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab measurement about like that. So it's 0.6 inches or 17.5 millimeters. So we need to go into Lightburn and adjust that. But I've also taken off the shroud and the air assist because we need the extra elevation here, so that once we put this in here, that we're able to focus on that inside lip. So here I want to just adjust this to where it's going to focus kind of right where we want it. All right, so it did engrave, and I don't know if you'll be able to see that. If not, I will try to put a photo up. Now, the one thing I forgot to do, since this was on the inside and not the outside, I should have actually reversed it, and that would have made this appear, because it's on here, it's backwards. If you were looking at it on the outside of the ring, it would be the right direction. So that's just a little bit of trial and error. That's why you want to get some test material before you do anything for real jobs. But we did get the inside engraved. So let's go ahead and flip things around and we'll do something on the outside of this. All right, so first we want to get the outside diameter. So this is going to be, looks like 21.7 millimeters. So we'll save that for later. And then I've gone ahead and moved these into the innermost posts. And so what we're going to want to do is just bring those all the way in, and then we're going to slide this over the top and bring them back out. Again, just kind of checking to make sure that it's running fairly smooth and even. And then once we have that where we want it, we will go ahead and lock this down. Just going to move these apart, kind of tighten that in shape, and just double check that. So then here we're also going to want to kind of lock this in at a 90, because we're going to be going the outside, it can be level again. So just make sure this is slid out of the way, and then let's get this in place underneath the laser. All right, so there we go. Now we want to hit the center, top dead center, right about there. We'll lock that focus in. Now, I've already gone and measured the diameter, made those adjustments in Lightburn. Now what we want to do is come here again, and I'm going to go ahead, I've reattached these, but it's going to be easier to align this. Again, we want to get this square to the machine, and then we're going to bring we're going to use the fire option. So come to our move, hit fire, and I'm going to want to center this. And I've set up a file here, adjusted the size so it should wrap around a bit. Let's go ahead and frame this. It looks pretty good, so we're happy with it. Make sure our glasses are on. Double check our speed and layer settings, and let's go ahead and let's run this. All right, so we did run it on the outside. Again, I'm not sure how well this is going to show up, but I'll try to get a photo on this as well if this doesn't show clearly. So here again, I think maybe using the Brilliance marking spray on here would be the way to go. That's definitely going to get you a more consistent and darker image on here. But hopefully this does show the capabilities of the laser to mount a small ring. This is I think it's about a 7 or 7.5 size ring, so it's not that big, and definitely some options to be able to customize and engrave these. All right, for a little fun to wrap this up, I want to see how tight we can get. So I've got this dowel, it's a little under a 1/4 inch, and if that works out well, we've got a toothpick. We're going to try throwing both of these into this chuck rotary, see if we can get some text printed on there. So let's jump over the bench and get that done. All right, that is complete. And it looks like it worked out quite well. Bring this in for you to see, hopefully. All right, so as you can see here, I was able to get the toothpick mounted in with the step down jaws just reversed from how I had them originally. And that's holding that in there, and it is spinning fairly true. And so now the trick will be, we gotta try to get a measurement on this so we can set up the steps per rotation and see if I can do this. It looks like 2.2 millimeters is our diameter. So we'll get that plugged into Lightburn, and then we will adjust our text because it's going to need to be even smaller on here. So we'll get this lined up. Now again, we need to try to get this lined up with this toothpick here. So we're going to hit the fire button under our move tab. We'll do our best to get this centered about like that. See how it does. All right, that was very quick. Let's see how this came out. I don't know if we can see that, but there is some fine print on there. All right, and there you have it. That's going to about wrap it up for my initial testing on this Ortur Y-Axis Rotary Chuck. This is a nice little unit. It comes mostly assembled, very easy to set up in Lightburn, and it performed really well in all the tests I did. And so I hope this showed you some of the ins and outs of using this, how it might be an advantage to you. And if you have any questions about this, go ahead and leave the comment down below. I will try to get back to you fairly quickly. I'd like to thank Cinesmall for providing this for me. I will have a link to their site where you can purchase this, as well as at the time of this video, they are offering a $20 off coupon. Use the code MA20, that is MA20, and should get you this at an additional discount of $20 off. And so look for that down below. I'll also have some other links to some of the other products and items used in this video in case you're interested in playing with them yourself. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found it educational. If you'd like to see more, definitely hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. And if you want to catch us live and maybe ask some questions, my friend David and I, Dave from the Clack Shack and I, we do a Sunday night live stream every week where we answer your questions, we talk about new projects, new things going on in our workshops as well. It's a good time and we love interacting live with you. That is going to wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will be definitely doing more in the workshop. Got some more projects and some more products to look over. So I hope you will come back and check those out as well. But in the meantime, I hope you can get out into your workshop and make something too. We'll catch you next time.